So fast forward 6 months, I interviewed at Knife River, and they pretty much asked me, and they said, "All right, if you were to make $8 an hour, 8.50 an hour right now, but you knew you had opportunity for advancement, would you quit?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Because I didn't feel I had any advancement opportunities, and it was a dead end job, is how I felt. And at the end of it, they offered me the job at 14.50 an hour. And I walked out of there and thought, I'm gonna be rich. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I just got a $6 pay bump.
Yeah.
But $6 was almost 75% of my current pay.
Heck yeah.
Like, I'm gonna make it. And I thought, man, I'm gonna save so much money. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be so disciplined. Okay, fast forward 1 year. I made 60 grand from 30 grand, and I had the same amount of money in my bank account. You know why? Because we adjust to what we make,
Yeah.
and we just spend more as we make more.
We don't change our habits.
I wasn't disciplined to make a change.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you begged for that opportunity to go make more money, you got it, and you did nothing with it. You just partied at a higher level.
Mhm.
Like, like, God, you think of all the money that was wasted on it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
gosh. But you live and learn.
Mhm.
So, um, but no, Knife River, I started there April 15th, tax day of 2005. And that was the beginning of an 18-year career. So pretty wild to think
A
about.
long time.
I was a loyal Knife River employee. I bled orange. Um, my blood was not red. It was orange.
Mhm.
That's for sure.
What was just one thing that you really loved about working there?
Whew, the people.
Mm.
Um, Not only just the opportunities and that it's a good living, like you could build a great career and all the relationships of people I met. Like, Knife River should be very proud. They've got a lot of good people that work for them
Mhm.
and what they stand for. And I've got to meet thousands of Knife River team members over the years. There's 5 to 6,000 employees,
Mm.
like, and from their top management down to their front line, like, I was very honored to be able to work there and have the career I did for 18 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like, especially in like my generation, like we kind of change jobs a lot, like trying to figure it out. So
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's actually so amazing when I hear like especially your story of like being somewhere for 18 years and just being fully invested and going head first and
Mhm.
just working like a dog.
Yeah.
Like, and nobody was going to get in your way.
Yeah. Well, working like a dog was true. I mean, working construction, you work a lot of hours and you make sacrifices, and to balance, seasonal jobs, you chase the work. So if you slow down during the fall, you still got mouths to feed at home. So it's like you go work out of town during the winter to get by. And sometimes you got to go work out of state, depending on where Knife River needs employees. It's like, hey, you want to be laid off, or do you want to leave the state and
Yeah.
go work out of town for a while? It's like, well, I got to go make money. Like, I've got to fend for my family, and I don't want to sit here and just get by.
Yeah.
So you chase the work, but there was many years working 3,000 hours. It's what we did.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that's what they did.
Mhm.
Towards the end of my career there, I didn't have to work that many hours. It was closer to like 25 to 2,800,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that felt like a lot less. But a standard employee 40 hours a week year round is 2,080 hours.
Right.
So when you think about that, I mean,
You found a lot of extra hours.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That a lot of people aren't willing to work.
Yeah.
And was that purely just a drive of, we've talked about this before, kind of a new realization for you that like work is your sport.
Yeah.
Is that how it felt at Knife River, or was it like you and Ash had goals or things that you were like, I got to work this much to achieve them? Like, why?
Well, part of it, I loved what I did.
Mm.
And when you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work as much.
Yeah.
But I hadn't done a lot, so I didn't really know what to compare it to in a sense. Um, I just knew I was making good money and making a good living,
Yeah.
and I could retire there if you go put in the time and put in the work. Like,
Mhm.
you could retire with a great 401k and benefits, and like, what more do you want? Like,
Yeah.
that's the American dream.
Mhm.
But I wore a lot of hats over the years as I had different opportunities come
Mhm.
up. Um, because I never stayed stagnant too long.
Yeah.
Um,
You're an achiever.
I tried
Yeah.
to be, but it came with some hurdles. It came with
Mhm.
some ups and downs, and um,
Yeah, what was one of your, like, biggest areas of growth or biggest challenges that you faced while you were there?
whew, I think, well, my first few years at Knife River, I was still drinking a lot, and even though I was a good employee, uh, there was times I would be out too late at the bar and my phone would be dead and not wake up to my alarm and roll in late or roll in hungover. And at the time, it was just like, well, sorry, like I'm
Mhm.
here now. And then as you get older and you realize when you're coming in hungover or under the influence, you're not just putting yourself at risk. Like when you're running heavy equipment, like there's a matter of life and death with your teammates. And like thinking about putting loved ones and some of your dear friends that you work with, that like you're putting them at risk. And that was very selfish of me,
Mhm.
because when I was younger, it was just kind of like, everybody's doing it,
Mhm.
it's an excuse. And um, I'd been there about 3 years and had an opportunity, maybe 3 to 5 years, something like that. Uh, Came in late one too many times, and I had gotten suspended before and got wrote up, and hey, like you need to stop this crap, like you need to grow up, figure it out, like we got a business to run here.
And you're a super punctual person,
Right.
like, by nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like being late.
No. Yeah.
So if I was late, it's because, yeah, I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
But um it was about 5 year mark right in there that um I came in late one too many times, and I smelled like alcohol. And a coworker turned me in and said, "Hey, Billy smells like alcohol, like,
Mhm.
red eyes, like we got a 12-hour shift to work here, yada yada." And my shift started at 6 in the morning.
Mhm.
And at 7 a.m. they came in and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I'm like, "Oh boy, I know what this is."
Mhm.
And I stalled and I beat around the bush and I made some phone calls. I called my wife. Uh, I called my wife, and like she told me the night before, like, "Don't be going out. You got to work early. Like, this is what we got. Like,
Mhm.
remember, be disciplined." And yeah, yeah, yeah. I do what I want.
Mhm.
Next thing you know, I call her and I says, "Babe, I'm being asked to go take a breathalyzer at work. I smell like alcohol. I'm scared." And she just said, "Hey, no matter what happens, we'll work through it. Like, it'll be all right.
Mm.
We're in this together,
Mm.
and I'll be here."
Yeah.
And that took 1,000 pound weight off my shoulders. And like, what she should have said, what I would expected her to say is like, "You jackwad, I told you don't go out. Like,
Yeah.
why did
What do
you?"
you expect?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it could have easily just been like, "I'm so done with this. Like,
Yeah.
you're a drunk. Like, this is ridiculous." Like,
Yeah.
and she didn't. And I needed to hear that.
Right.
Uh, and by the time I called my attorney, and she's like, "Well, did you sign this? Did you sign that? Did you agree to this?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, you just need to go
Mm.
own your stuff. Like,
Mhm.
this ain't about your attorney. Like, this is about, you got to go figure it out.
Mhm.
And maybe this is your, moment where you need to figure out, I need to reset what I got going on.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was just like I was just trying to do anything I could to get through that, and let's get back to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I went to the clinic, blew in the breathalyzer and I blew a .095 at 10 a.m.
Mm.
And that was 4 hours into my shift. And I honestly felt like I'm going to beat this.
Mm.
Like, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
I've stalled. Like, I'm good. And a .095 was my neutral place. Like, that was my norm. And I thought, how am I .095? They say that's a DUI. Like, it's
you're
above a legal
you're like, I'm
limit.
sober.
Like, I'm fine. And I thought,
Yeah.
Billy, like, you better figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't humiliating enough. It was having to get a ride home from the boss
Mm.
and him being pretty quiet and just allowing me some time to talk a little bit and kind of think about stuff. And he just said, like, you got a lot of people cheering for you, man. Like, you got a family at home. Like,
Mm.
I really want you to think about what you're doing. This isn't about Knife River right now. This is about like, this is a pivotal moment in your life. And it was like, okay, this is starting to get real.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And my wife was home because we had her stay home the first couple of years that Kyla was born. And we sacrificed to be able to do that so that she could be an at-home mama for the baby. And
Mhm.
and all I could think about is like, if I lose my job, I lose my wife. If I lose my wife, I lose my kids. Like, this is my livelihood. Like, my world's crashing. Like, what am I gonna do?
Mhm.
And I just thought, you know what you need to do? You need to quit drinking.
Mhm.
But it was just still kind of like, I could drink. I just need to limit it.
So you start bargaining.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the negotiation I had in my head of
Yeah.
like, you're in denial, Billy.
I
Like,
just need to have self-control, not just stop
yeah,
completely. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
And did that work?
I went in, my wife gave me a big old hug. We sat down and there was some awkward silence. And I hugged my little girl Kyla, and it was just like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Mm.
like, and I decided I was going to go to a meeting. And I went and found a meeting spot that afternoon in Albany. And it was just like, like, I don't fit in. Like, this is just like,
Mm.
the whole, hi, my name's Billy. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Billy. Like, like, when you're being humbled, that's the last thing
Yeah.
you want to deal with. It's just
Yeah.
like, I hadn't fed into it. Like, I
Right.
didn't believe it. It's just like, I'm just going through the motions.
Mm.
So, yeah, I was suspended. That next week, it was all in the air if I had a job. And it was just like, what are you going to do? Like, well, I don't know. Like, I have a career job at Knife River. Like, I have a job waiting for me if they give me the opportunity. And it was like a 7-day suspension. And towards the end of the week, they said, hey, we've got some things figured out. We'd like for you to come in and meet with us.
Mm.
And I owe it to Fred, who was in my corner. And he went to bat for me
Mm.
with HR. And there was people in management that they saw the potential in me. And they said more or less like, when we give people these opportunities, nobody ever makes it.
Mm.
Like, people fall off and then they go right back to their same crap.
Yeah.
They may do good for 6 months or 9 months, whatever. And then it's just, here it is. It's just a revolving door. And then they end up getting fired.
Mm.
Like, nobody ever really makes it. So,
Right.
like, why would this be any different?
Mm-hmm.
The guy's an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me some harsh ultimatums, and I had to go to a certain amount of counseling. I had to go to a certain amount of AA classes the first month, second month, third month, and then slowly kind of reduce how much I had to do for counseling and that. And on probation for the company for 2 years, like,
Mm.
no ifs, ands, or buts. If I'm 1 minute late, you're fired. Like,
Wow.
your last chance of the last chance. Like,
Yeah.
that's where we were at.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful for the opportunity to prove myself. But at that point, I got sober out of stubbornness to be like, I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you wrong.
Mm.
And it wasn't that point, I didn't get sober for the right reason. I got sober because I need to save my job and, take care of my family.
Right.
Um, but when that, again, the weight off the shoulders, that gave me an opportunity to come back. Um, I started going to a lot of AA classes and over at Group One in Albany, and it's a rowdy group. Like it's a
Mhm.
rowdy bunch. Now I like the 7 a.m. meeting, but I don't go near as often as I used to. But the 7 p.m. meeting was what I went to that time because I would work,
Yeah.
6 hour, 6 to 6, and go
Right.
to a meeting at night. And but I started clicking with that group and going and seeing the value and hearing the stories and being able to tell my story, and it's humbling. Like
Mhm.
as you talk about your failures, you start realizing and remind yourself like why you're there and what led to that, and
Mhm.
all the things you really don't think about when you're in it.
Yeah.
And I had been sober about 2 months at this point, and during that time, I had so much resentment for the gentleman named Chris who turned me in. I just thought, oh, you some like I just ugh. And man, it was probably about at the 6 month mark.
Yeah.
I got to see him at work, and I was able to go up and talk to him one on one and shake his hand and just say,
Mm.
I cannot thank you enough for having the courage to speak up when it would have been a lot easier to just turn a blind eye and be like, whatever, he's just hungover.
Yeah.
Like, but you spoke up, and that's led to me getting in trouble. But that's on me. Like,
Right.
I put him in that position.
Yeah.
I came in hungover. That was on me. And
Mhm.
I had so much resentment for him. But like after being sober a couple months and going to AA and kind of reevaluating life, I started changing my mindset of why I was sober. And it wasn't just out of stubbornness to prove everybody wrong. It was like, oh my God, I really need to get sober
Mm.
for my kids, for myself, for my wife. Like, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. Like, I want to be a better teammate at work, like a better friend. Like,
Mhm.
that it took a couple months of sobriety to see it through a different set of goggles.
Mhm.
But I've told that to many people over the years of just, I got sober for the wrong reason. But after a couple months, I shifted my mindset, and then my true sobriety took off
Mhm.
of um, just being proud of it
Mhm.
and embracing it. And I no longer thought at the end of 2 years, we're throwing a party and we're going to get kegs and we're going to have a good old time. And no, like it was like, I don't know how long I'm going to stay sober. I just know it was the mindset shifted to, I know I'm in control today.
Mhm.
And the amount of people I've met through AA and just in the community, or that I've been able to influence, talking about my sobriety openly. There's so many people that they want to have the courage to do it, and they just they don't want to come to terms with it. And it's like, to me, when I talk about my sobriety and I wear it on my sleeve, I literally, people don't realize how much it helps me.
Mm. Yeah.
And even though I'm telling my story to them and talking to them about questions they're asking or their journey and the struggle they're having,
Yeah.
and that's how AA is. Sometimes you think I ain't got time for an AA meeting, but when you start making excuses why you don't have time, is almost like, all right, you need to go to a meeting, you need to go be there because you never know what you're going to hear or the impact you may make on a newcomer
Right.
that says like, I need to hear your journey, because people get sober for the wrong reasons often,
Mhm.
and I was guilty of it. And I did it out of stubbornness and anger, not because, I thought getting sober for somebody else, like that's the only reason I'm going to get sober. It's just because I'm going to accommodate to what you want.
Yeah.
But really, I thought it was selfish for me to get sober for me
Mhm.
so that I could go be a father and be a husband.
Mhm.
And once I shifted that mindset, my world turned like
Yeah.
for nothing but the better. And I was sober for 10 years before
Mhm.
I fell off the wagon, but
Mhm.
10 years of sobriety and
It's a
knife,
long time.
it was a very long time.
Yeah.
And it was something that
Are you proud of that?
very proud of it
Yeah,
because
you should be.
nobody can take that away from
Yeah.
me. And, like getting your 1 month chip is like, man, I made it 1 month and then a
Mhm.
3 month and a 6 month. And, you know, when you get your 1 year and it's medal and it's like, man, I made it a year.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, you did it, you put in the work.
Mhm.
But and then as you go 2, 3, and 5 years, and it's like 5 years is a big milestone.
Mhm.
And statistically, when you think about it, there's a lot of people that start falling off
Mhm.
because they made it. They feel they accomplished it. And I started seeing and feeling those thoughts like between like year 7 and 8. I'm like, I live the sober life. I have a good time. I
Mhm.
drink lots of non-alcoholic beer, and I just live the sober life and happy go lucky and have a good time. I'm very
Yeah.
fortunate. A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people that are sober are like, I can't go hang around a bunch of drunks. Like, and it's
Right.
understandable.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You know, it's totally
It's a
understandable.
temptation,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And as I came up on that 10-year mark, I kept thinking to myself, like, when is it complete? Like, when is the mission over?
Mm.
And I literally, like, I did honest sobriety for 10 years and did it well
Yeah.
and had fun doing it. And my career advanced, my relationship got better, my kids' relationship and I got better. Like, so many opportunities. It's like, why this is a no-brainer.
Right.
Why would you ever think about drinking?
Yeah.
But sometimes as you get sober and you stop going to meetings and you stop keeping it fresh in your mind, you start forgetting about why you got sober.
Mm.
And that's something that I feel when I go to meetings, it keeps it more fresh in my mind. It recharges my battery
Yeah.
to see things with a light of like, yeah, that was me. That's why I need to stay sober.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the shut off switch.
Mhm.
I do like to go big or go home.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel
Uh,
like you really just said it. When you stopped drinking, was it like did you feel better about yourself? Everything in your life that you had been trying to work so hard for, it was like, was that one thing that just kept getting in the way of almost like your growth exploding?
yeah, yeah.
Was that really that kind of
Um,
that one barrier?
I feel like yeah, that was part of it, and it was just kind of like there was nothing bad that came from not drinking.
Yeah.
And coming to terms with that was like, so name it. What are you missing out on because you don't drink?
Yeah.
Well, some harsh realities were my relationship with my dad was not as strong once I quit drinking,
Mm,
but my dad was an alcoholic.
mhm.
And I didn't realize that I was his drinking buddy. And when I'm not drinking, that was a shift.
Yeah.
So that was a hard one to swallow. Um, it's not his fault. It's on me. It's just, you know, how I handle it kind of thing.
Right. But
But
in you trying to choose to live your life better, really,
yep,
it ended up costing you a form of a relationship.
yeah.
How did you how did you cope with that? Realizing that he was more of your drinking buddy and you lost kind of that relationship because you gave up alcohol.
Um, Probably, I don't know that I've ever came to terms with it.
Mm.
Um, I remember I talked to my cousin about my dad and some of my frustrations over the years, and he's so simple the way he looks at life. He's just like, what's it gonna prove? What's it gonna change? Like,
Mm.
like, is it gonna change anything, or is it just gonna put a damper in your relationship if you go bring up something? Like,
Mhm.
the only one that can answer it is you. Like, but you just gotta ask yourself, is it worth bringing up? Like, is it
Mhm.
worth even talking about? And it was always one of those like, man, like I feel like I want to say like, Dad, like I quit drinking and now I'm not your hangout buddy. And it's like I didn't have the courage to bring it up to him.
Mm.
Um, but I did. Once he was detoxing and after years of sobriety, he was in the hospital and it was weighing heavy on me. And I had a chance to talk to him on the side of the hospital bed. And I just told him, like, after all the years of me being sober and like raising a family and being a great father to my kids and being a husband, like, do you realize that you've never once said you're proud of me? And I hate how heavy that weighed on me, but it was a weight off my shoulders because I've never seen my dad show much emotion in life. Um, and that day I did. And I knew I gut punched him,
Mm.
but it needed to be said.
Yeah.
Um, and it was tough because, my dad was, big into the racing circuit and just, his past, he just, I mean, so many people wanted to be like him. He was good time Charlie, happy go lucky, life of the party, like,
Mm.
but over the years, like 3 marriages later, and,
Mm. Yeah.
it's like he just, I would have thought he had been more proud of his next generation than what he was. And I've kind of came to terms that it was a me issue. Um, it bothered me a lot more than it did him. And, you know, I said what I said and we had a good conversation about it. And,
Yeah.
it was a few years before he passed, but, uh,
But he probably couldn't really resonate with it because looking at you getting sober and trying to make your life right. I mean, I didn't know him, but I'm
yeah,
sure on some level, it probably was hard for him to see that
yeah,
because honestly, it was probably more about him than you anyway,
yeah,
right? His ability to not tell you he was proud of you would mean that he'd have to admit that the way that he lived
right.
wasn't really the way that he could have lived his best life.
Yeah, for sure.
So in celebrating you meant admitting his own shortcomings.
Yeah.
And from what you've shared, it sounds like he just never really could reach a point where he could do that with you.
So true. And it's like, some of his old racing buddies, I mean, they reach out like Nova and some of those guys, like they love and adored my dad and like who he was. Like
Yeah.
so many people talk about like they wish they had his talent and like his charisma of how he was with kids that would come
Yeah.
up and, being big in the racing circuit and being
Yeah.
nationally ranked and like that whole life. Like he was a leader of the pack. But I never got to see that part of my dad.
Right.
Um, and it's awesome to hear the stories, but it also makes me so frustrated with what alcoholism will do,
Mm-hmm.
how it'll eat up good people that are good hearted. And it's like, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. You're good.
I just, I'm not proud of my shortcomings, but I'm also proud of the journey I've taken to grow and
Yeah.
have ownership in trying to right my wrongs and just trying to live life and try to be a better person and make an impact in others. Like, it's just like nobody's perfect.
Mm-mm.
It's going to come with mistakes. There's, and it's like I just try to be a good person, but but it's like we're human.
Yeah.
So I try to give him grace at the same time,
Yeah.
but I also don't want to just sit and make excuses. Um, and I know as he looks down on me, I know he's proud of all of his kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I bet he wishes he was a better grandparent
Yeah.
to his kids,
Hmm.
you know?
I feel like it's so it's so good for you to talk about this because I think there's so many people who struggle with substance abuse, alcoholism, addictions, and how it destroys good people. Exactly what you're saying. Like, I think a lot of times people see somebody struggling with addiction and they define them by that.
Mhm.
And your statement of like, it just destroys good people. Like, your dad, people loved him, but yet he also had a dark side that he was struggling with through his life and his own traumas that he was trying to cope with.
Yeah.
And in that caused more trauma for you and your siblings and, other people that he encountered, but didn't mean that he was just this awful person.
Right.
Just meant that he was human and suffering.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some people don't figure it out as soon as we would have liked them to.
Yep.
And I think for you, like, how are you so honest about it? I know you talk about that it helps keep you sober, right? It reminds you of your sobriety. But I mean, do you worry about people having like a perception of you based on your past and like judging you off of that?
Yeah, but I came to terms with it. Like I can't change who I was. I can just let my actions speak louder than my words
Yeah.
about who I am and the direction I'm headed.
Yeah.
Um, doesn't mean it doesn't come without shame.
Yeah.
Um, but like I try to look at glass half full instead of half empty because it's like I could shame myself and say, man, like there were so many nights that I just would be at the bars and drinking and having a good time. And I could look at the reverse of that and say, all the times I was away from my family and when my kids were home, um, but it's like I can't I can't dwell on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had to come to terms that I wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect, but each day I want to be better than I was yesterday. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's not a straight line all the way up.
No.
It's like sometimes we take two steps forward and one step back. Like,
Yeah.
but
Sometimes we
it's
find ourselves in those kind of low places, right? They're like defining moments.
yeah,
But like society's like, oh, you want to try so hard to avoid anything that's like, ruins your reputation or isn't good or, which is true. But so much of that can be used for good
yeah,
if you allow it. It
yeah,
shapes you, it defines you. I mean, you just talked about a ton of things that you've, and I mean, I know there's more, but there's all these experiences you've had. That's the reason that you are who you are today. So you really can't ignore your past or run from it.
yeah,
And you own it and you talk about it. One, because it helps you, but also because it can help others.
yep.
What do you just shared so many impactful things. What, if somebody could take away one thing from your story, what would you want someone to take away from it?
I think don't let don't let failure scare you so bad that you're not willing to put yourself out there to try to be that person you want to be.
Mm.
And I think I joke that I don't have a lot of fear. Like I
Mhm.
joke about it that I'm not afraid of much.
Mhm.
And I don't say that like arrogantly. I've never been afraid to back down in a fight. I don't care how big you are. And part of that is just maybe my my lack of brains, realizing I'm about to get my butt whooped,
It's
or
your
it's just
grit.
having that courage of like
Yeah.
I'm not I don't have a lot of fear in my bones.
Mhm.
Um and I'm willing to take risk, and like thank God for my wife
Mhm.
cuz she is like the risk, like she puts a
Mediator.
yeah,
Yeah.
she puts it into perspective for me, because if somebody said, "Hey, Billy, I got this deal. It's a $20,000 car. The person needs money. I think it's worth 30." I'd be like, "Oh my God. All right. Let's just do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Like, we can go make money on that."
Yeah.
And she's like, hold up, time out. Like, uh, what if,
Mm.
what if it wasn't worth that? What if it's got a bad title? What if
She
the
slows
engine's
slows you
blown up?
down.
What if like there's
Yeah.
more to this picture? Why are they trying to sell it real quick? Like,
Yeah.
and I just think I ain't got time to worry about all that. We gotta go work on how we
We'll
can
figure
go.
that out on the way.
Yeah, and she reels me in, like,
Yeah.
because it's like she makes me think about things that I'm just like moving on.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to say she's the risk crasher, but
She's
she
a
she
mediator.
gives me some different insight and different
Yeah.
perspective, because
Yeah.
I have no fear when it comes to taking on risks.
Yeah.
Um,
You gotta have that balance.
yeah,
Like they're both really good, but you gotta have both, which is something that makes your guys' relationship so powerful.
yeah,
Cause yeah, you're like full blaze ahead. And she's like, well, here's some things to consider, Billy.
yeah,
Before we just go jump off this bridge, let's talk about this for a
right,
sec.
right,
Right. And sometimes, yeah, it can kind of correct your course. And
yeah,
yeah, I respect that a lot about you guys. Like I love that. It's this yin and yang that you guys have that's you can't it just is what it is.
yeah,
And God just made it that way. And I love it. I
yeah.
love it.
And she don't live the 100-mile-an-hour life like I do, and I have to slow down,
Yeah.
and she's got to speed up.
Yeah.
And it's good for both of us in a sense.
Yeah.
But try to find what works.
Yep.
So,
Is there anything that we didn't cover or anything that you'd want to say? Just finishing up.
man, um, I think overall, I kind of went down of some of my, my younger journey, like all the way through my 10 years of sobriety before I fell off the wagon.
Yeah.
And I think of all the people I met and the difference I made in others along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about having the courage to wear it on my sleeve and talk about it, it has been so impactful to so many people in a sense, when you're not afraid to just say, "Hey, I did it. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't perfect. And these are some of the things I did that were wrong. But like, this is what I did to come out of it. And this is how I overcame it." And it doesn't mean it didn't come with lots of struggles. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I love drinking. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it enough.
Mm-hmm.
I love a good time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I was good at it. So, but it, my wife said to me years ago, and she says, "Drunk Billy could never provide the lifestyle that we live today for
Mm.
our family."
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's not that we got a lot of money, but our lifestyle is different than where it was 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, uh, I just think of, don't be afraid to talk about your story, because it may make a difference to somebody. And there's so many people that reach out to me and like private message me if I put a post on Facebook about my drinking or about some of the struggles I've had with it, or,
Mhm.
some of the harder days with it. And they literally will break down and just tell me, like, I needed to hear this. Like, my life's in shambles. Like, how do you get through it? How do you see, like, how do you get to tomorrow? Because right now, like, they're just festering in it. And it's like, it brings them courage. It shows them, like, you can do it.
Mhm.
But, like, you got to have a good support system around you. And it starts with your wife, it starts with your kids, it starts with
Mhm.
the people you surround yourself with. You become a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have good people around me, I would have never hit 10 years.
Yeah.
That's just that's stats. That's
Mhm.
facts.
Mhm.
Um, but when I would put my friends around me, my friends wouldn't let me go drink.
Mhm.
They'd be like, "No way. Like,
Mhm.
no, no." So I'm very grateful for the people I surround myself with, and I think that's a big part of my sobriety. It's you know doesn't mean it's easy just because you're hanging around good people.
Right.
Um, but it's like, do you have people to lean on during those times to try to stay ahead of it and remind yourself why you're sober?
Yeah.
Because when I think of drinking, I think, oh my God, that's a good party right there. Like, I think of a good Friday night.
Mhm.
Yeah, singing karaoke, having a good time. I have to remind myself, what does the good party lead to? Well, you're leaving the event and you're driving home
Yeah.
under the influence. And what if you wrecked into somebody and
Yeah.
took a life, or hurt somebody? And not only the DUI that you could get and the trouble financially and with the
Yeah.
law, and like how it could cost you like all of that is
Everything.
just all the things with it. But it's like, I think of the good in the party.
Right.
I have to remind myself what the party truly leads to, and it's the
Consequences.
trouble and the
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
I always think of the good in it, and I forget of
Yeah.
why I got sober sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for
uh,
sharing your story.
yeah, no, thanks
I'm
for asking.
honored. I'm honored that I get to chat with you about it. And I know it's emotional. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard to be vulnerable, especially like I know we're sitting here having a conversation, but like people are going to be watching this. And I think it's important for people to see who you really are,
yeah,
the good, the bad, the ugly, the real, and the raw. It all shapes who we are. We all have things we're not proud of, like, and it doesn't define you,
yeah,
right? You can overcome anything. Like you're the only one standing in your own way. And once you make those decisions to live your life differently, I mean, the world is at your fingertips.
yep,
Like you Billy Scott Real Estate. Like,
yeah,
right? Like we're building a team. You had a vision, you're creating this business to go help people.
yeah.
And all because you made really hard decisions to change your life. And now you get to keep changing others.
Well,
I love
you
it.
can't do it alone. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. And I know it went a little deeper than what I thought, but
That was good.
when you speak from the heart,
Yeah,
that's the way it goes. But
it's okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.